Good morning, students. Today we will be discussing about our third lesson in our module 1, which is about designing graphical interfaces. What you will learn in this lesson are understanding the concepts behind graphical user interfaces, discussing the types of graphical user interface layouts that can be used in Android Studio, demonstrate how you can make programs with a graphical user interface, and demonstrate the best practices when building graphical user interfaces. So, we will dive straight into our activity now. So, I would like you to open your Android Studio if it is already installed. So, our activity for today we will be creating, or for this week, our activity for this week will be creating uh, a calculator. We will be designing a calculator rather than uh, it might not have any functionality, but it will give us a background on how we are going to design the uh, user interface elements in our phone app. So, we will start with nothing, diba? We will start with nothing. So, we will create a new project, then empty activity. We will name this my calculator, or rather our last name, then calculator. Then click finish. So, we will be introduced with this screen when we are creating our first application. So, again, file, then new project, then empty activity, then last name underscore. Avoid using spaces and avoid using spaces in naming your project. Last name underscore calculator. So, after creating your application, you will be greeted with this screen. So, after this screen, we will be able to see what we are going to do. So, we will not tamper with the main activity.java, which will contain most of our source code. We will be editing the main activity.java. So, go ahead in main activity.java, then it will show you what you are going to be using for your project. So, let's open a calculator as a point of reference for designing our application. So, you can see that this is the standard uh, calculator that Windows has for its Windows. So now, we're going to design something similar. Maybe omitting the scientific formulas. Maybe omitting the root, the square, and the fraction. Maybe we'll leave uh, the point and as well as the basic functions. So, for example, um, 0 to 9 characters, then point and the basic mathematical symbols. So, let's start with dragging the buttons. So, for now, we will remove Hello World. Click on Hello World, then press Delete. So, we will be left with nothing in our application. There will be nothing. So, let's try dragging a button. So, go to the common in palette. Usually, it is hidden here. Just click the palette. Then, it will show up. So, click button, then drag it over to the screen. Sir, how come that you have two screens at the same time? You can choose the screen that you want to from this blue diamond here. It's either design, which shows the actual design of your application. The blueprint, which shows the wireframe of your project, or both. So for this project, I will be showing you both. But you can go for blueprint for clarity, or design if you want to see how it would actually look on your phone. So you can design using both or either. So you can drag it from here. You can also drag it from the design section. So now we have a button, a reference button. Let's say this will be our, let's see the calculator again. We can make this into number 0. So how do we make this into number 0? We can go to the attributes, click the attributes tab here. Then you can declare what its ID will be. So for now, we will not adjust it. We will be hiding it. We can go to the code. So para sa inyo, kindly click the split option. So it will show up the code along with the screen. So split option allows you to manipulate the code as well as the design. So it says here button. So dito sa may Android text, kindly change it to the number that you are going to be seeing in your screen. So for example, this will be our button 0. So let's type 0 here. So now it shows up as 0. Sir, I don't want to drag so many buttons here. You can actually copy paste it. So for example, highlight the button, Control C, then paste. Now it is double. Now you can name it as number 1. So we now have button 1. Then highlight the 2 buttons again, Control C, then Control V for paste, then drag away the copied buttons. So we now have 4 buttons. We can do it as many as we can so that we can satisfy the number of buttons that we need. So for example, now we have 0, 1. Then we can change the others as 2 and 3. Now we have 0, 1, 2, and 3 buttons. So how is it created? It started with a 0, diba? So we can go drag the 0 down for the formatting na. So as you can see, there is grid lines that will show up and it will snap on into the position. So let's drag the 0 button into its position at the bottom. So may 0 na tayo, di ba? Then let's open the component 3. As you can see, there are red circles showing up. When these red circles show up, it means that there is an error. So what does the error say? The error says this view is not constrained. It only has a design time position, meaning it is not, the position is not defined in the code. So when you start this application, the button might be somewhere around the screen in a not so definite position. So how are we going to define its position? There's an easy way to define this. Have you noticed the circles at the boxes? It allows you to bind the position of the UI element. So for example, drag this circle to the screen or to the right screen. Now, drag the left one to the left screen. So now, the position is bound horizontally. Now, we will bind the position vertically. So, we can bind it to the bottom. Sir, now it is at the bottom. You can drag it out in the middle. So, as you can see, it is centered and it has a position bound. As you notice, wala na siya'y error. So, ganun lang. Now, sir, how about the other buttons? So, sana yung calculator? So, again, as a point of reference, this is the calculator. Now, we have 1, 2, and 3. How are we going to be putting the buttons or the other buttons? So, first, dagdag lang natin yung point. So, let's copy-paste the buttons again so that it will multiply. So, drag out. So, we now have 7 buttons total. So, we can rename the other buttons. You can click here, then the code will show up in the side. So, ano yung i-edit natin? So, this is, let's say, this will be 4. And this will be 5. And this will be 6. And let's add 3. Let's add 3 more for now. So this will be 0. This will be point. This will be plus and minus. Okay, I think we have replicated the calculator so far. So, now we need to drag the plus and minus as well as the point here at the bottom. So, when you are going to design an app, your app or your design element should depend on whatever the model of your phone is. Dapat gagana siya regardless of the phone model. So, halimbawa, tablet ba yung gagamitin nyo, dapat magre-readjust siya according to the size. So, as you notice, when I drag 0, everything else will not be realigned. So, we are going to bind the other buttons to the 0 which already has its own position. So, for example, the plus and minus. So, we are going to bind it horizontally and vertically to the 0 button. So, by binding it, we can just bind it to the here, to the 0 button. There. So, it is bound at the 0 button. Do the same for the point button, the decimal. Let me drag it away for a bit. Yan. So now, whenever the 0 moves, the other buttons move horizontally as well. As you notice. Pero, there is still one flaw to this. If I move the 0 button vertically, the others will not move. So now we are going to bind the other buttons vertically as well. So click the plus minus button and bind the vertical position to the 0. Ayan ha. So, nakabind na. Then we will bind the point as well. Now, there are no errors for the buttons that I have made. Si point, si plus minus, tsaka si 0. So what will happen if I drag the 0 now? Vertically and horizontally. So that is how you bind the buttons. So what you're going to do is do this with the other buttons so that all the other buttons will not move around the screen when you are using it. So ganun lang. So as you notice, this is the beginning of our design in apps. So ayan. So we will continue with the buttons. So sana tayo? Now we have 1, 2, and 3. So now we will just put 1, 2, and 3 here. Then bind the 2 to 0. So we're going to bind the horizontal position of 2 to 0. Why we are going to do that? Because pag nag-move ang 0, dapat gagalaw din yung 2. Pero hindi dapat, so ayan ha, kita nyo na, gumalaw din yung 2. So Control Z natin. So I bind the horizontal position of 2 to 0. We can do the others as well. For example, 1, we are going to bind it plus minus, and this one. Sir, I noticed you only bind one circle. Hindi mo sinali yung kabilang circle. For this kasi, what is happening is that we only need one binding position for vertical and one binding position for horizontal. Hindi mo kailangang i-bind yung kabila. Meaning, may position na siya na basis. It doesn't need to be bind anymore. So for this, gagalaw na siya accordingly, di ba? So as you notice, parang may mali. If I move it vertically, magdidikit-dikit yung buttons. So what do you think we are going to need to do? Now we are going to bind it so that if we raise up the buttons, the other buttons will also go up. So for this, we're going to click the position here. Dadrag din natin sila. So, ibabind natin yung position sa other buttons. Or rather, hindi mo kailangang i-bind sa baba, no? For this, pwede mo siyang i-bind dito sa number 2. Ang 2 nakabind sa 0 sa sa vertical position niya. So that when 2 moves, 1 and 3 also moves with it. So let's see. Ayan, kita nyo na. So again, ang 1 nakabind sa 2. Sir, I think this is getting a bit confusing. We need to group the buttons according to their rows. So that if the screen stretches, nakagrouping pa rin yung button. Hindi siya naghihiwalay-hiwalay. Again, let's demonstrate in 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6. Now, we are going to bind 5 to 2. Raise it up a bit. Then, 16. So, it is 16. So, ayan ha. Then, anchor the position of 4 and 5 horizontally. Or, horizontal ba to? Parehas lang yan. Ayan. Vertically. Ito, vertical to ha. Vertical ang dalawang, ang up and down na circles, vertical. Horizontal yung left and right. So, I bind it so that if the 5 moves, 4 and 6 moves along with it. So, now we are going to bind it vertically naman. So, kung paano siya nag-bind, tignan nyo. Nag-bind tayo sa 1 and 4. so that it auto-adjust. So, ganun lang. Drag and drop lang ginagawa natin so far, di ba? Napansin nyo? So, ito, let's copy and paste. Ilang buttons pa ba? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So, we need 3 more. Let's see. So, sir, kinopya niya yung constraints. How are we going to remove the constraints? It's easy, no? To remove constraints, you just have to right-click and clear constraints of selection. Clear. Ganon. Then, clear and clear. To remove constraints, you can highlight it. Uy. You can highlight. Wait lang ha. May nagli-leak na audio eh. So, going back. So, we are now going to copy-paste it, di ba? So, 4, 5, 6 then, the operation buttons. So, we might need, teka lang, may nagalaw ata ako eh. Ba't ang dami ng button? Teka lang. Mali ata yung na-drag ko kanina. Let me undo everything. Ayun. So, ito gagawa ulit tayo ng button. Kaka-copy-paste natin. Then, drag. These buttons away. Nangyari. Let me undo everything. Ayan. 4, 5, and 6. We will copy 4, 5, and 6 buttons. Control C, then Control V. Then drag the buttons away. Uy. Ayaw. 5 lang yung copy ko. Well, anyway, ito na lang gagawin ko kasi may constraints na eh. Ayan. So now we have, I think this satisfies all the buttons we are going to need for our calculator. So we're just going to adjust the numbers for each button. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, plus, minus, divide, so on and so forth. So click here, then we're going to adjust 7. You can start with advancing yours kung kaya nyo na. You can start doing yours. 8, then 9, then plus, let's say that is plus, this will be the minus, this will be the divide. Ano ba symbol ng divide? Pwede na to divide. Then, ano kulang? The plus and the equals. Rather, the multiply and the equals. So, I think we're going to need just 2 more. Ayan. Hindi ko ata na copy-paste Teka lang. Control C, paste. Ayan. Lolo ko pala yung keyboard ko. Control C, paste. So, gawin natin tong multiplication. For programming, the symbol of multiplication is asterisk. So, ito naman equals. Saan ito? Ayan. So, I think this satisfies every button for our Dagdag tayo ng isa, yung C or clear. So, ito gagawin nating C or clear. Pwede natin i-type clear. Yan. So, now we are going to bind this. Babind na natin sila. So, move it. Then bind. Bind 8 to 5. Yan. Then, again, the position. Ba't na-drag lahat? Teka lang, ayun. Bind it to 8. Then, the horizontal to 4. Do this for 9 as well. Ayan. Then, again, ito lang, paulit-ulit lang. Ito, then, ito. Ito, then, ito. Then, ito naman, i-bind natin sa 8. Ito lang. Ayan. Do you still copy? Can you still follow our conversation, our class? Nakakasunod pa kayo? Confirm ko lang.
Sir, paano kaya ang divide, sir?
Divide is slash. Yan yung ginamit.
Okay.
Slash yung ginamit ko.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Then, for the multiply, yun ulit. Ito, then, ito. Same lang. Ulit lang. Eventually, we will reach the screen. Then, drag dito. Hopefully, ganyan na. We're almost done, actually. Kulang na lang yung display screen. So, for display screen, now we need to go back to the palette. Tignan natin ano yung mga nag-e-error na buttons, ha? Check natin. May error daw si minus. Kasi si minus hindi natin na-bind. Saan natin siya hindi na-bind? Hindi natin siya na-bind sa baba. So, wala siyang horizontal position. So, may kulang tayo dito sa mga middle natin. So, bind lang natin dito. Bind. Na-bind ba natin to? Wala. So, bind natin dito. Bind natin. Bind.
Sir, excuse me lang, sir.
Yes?
Question lang, sir. Kailangan ba i-bind lahat ng buttons, sir? Para mag-work ang
Yes. Make sure, ito ha. Make sure na walang natira na red buttons dito. Walang natira na may red, may error. Kasi kung may error, hindi gagana to. Magtuthrow yan ng error. Tignan mo, di yan gagana. Mag-e-error yan. Kasi, need kasi yung constraint to make sure that the buttons are positioned well. So, bind lang natin to sa position niya. So, ganyan. Make sure na walang error dito. Ganun lang. I hope that satisfies your question. Hindi kailangan lahat ng circles nakabind. Basta may isang x-axis and y-axis lang, which is the horizontal and the vertical position sa screen. kung saan siya mag-appear sa screen. So, ngayon, meron na tayong mga buttons. We can already test it. So, let's try running it. Papakita ko na lang. Teka, let me open the phone. Papakita ko na lang sa inyo yung phone ko. Ayan. So, di ba? As you might have noticed, malinis yung layout niya sa phone natin. So, ganito siya mag-a-appear sa phone. Sir, ba't naka-dark mode? Tapos puti sa settings yung ng phone ko. May dark mode na setting yung phone ko. So, pwede nyo gawin na black ang layout nyo. Pwede nyo baguhin yung color ng background. For example, dito, pwede nyo ilagay na background color. Pwede nyo baguhin. May mga codes niyan. Pwede nyo lang idagdag mismo sa XML ng design nyo. Are you still following me? So, ito interactable na yung buttons pero wala pa siyang function kasi di pa tayo nag-code. So, may layout na tayo ng calculator. Now, we are going to drag, go back to palette, we are going to drag something that would make it look like we are just creating a calculator. So, punta tayo sa text na tab. There are multiple choices that we can choose from. Pwede nating itry, halimbawa, text view. Text view is the normal text display. Yung hello world kanina, dyan nakabase. So, meron rin tayong plain text. Ayan. Plain text is used when may magta-type tayo ng data. Ito lahat para to sa data. Itong plain text, password. Pag nag-fill up tayo ng form yan. Yan ginagamit natin. So, we will just be using text view. So, yung text view, kung makita nyo dito sa design, sir, parang ang liit ata. Diba? Parang ang cute niya. So, we can drag it to make it bigger. Ayan. Pwede natin yung palakihin. Kung gusto nating pero, take note, you need to bind this as well. Kita nyo dito sa my component tree, nag-error na si text view. So, pwede natin siyang i-bind sa button para sumunod siya kung saan yung mga buttons. Para pag i-drag natin yung buttons, ayan, iba-follow siya. Then, its position, para centered siya, gawin natin nakabind siya sa both. So, centered siya. Ayan. So, meron na tayong basic na UI layout ng ating project. So, for this activity, I will be grading you based on your design or your creativity. For example, magdadagdag ba kayo ng background? Magdadagdag kayo ng picture? Gusto nyo ba bawat buttons may iba-ibang color? Or bawat functions ba may separate na color? It's up to you. Or ito ba may background color? So, let's experiment now on the basic or ano yung mga pwede nating itinker sa ating design. So, ito na yung basic na design na. Ito na yon. So, para may sample data lang tayo. For example, ito, may nakasulat pa kasi na text view. Sir, ba't may nakasulat na text view? Baguhin natin. For example, ano ba yung usually nagdi-display sa calculator? Di ba numbers? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.9876. So, yan. Diba? Oh, diba parang calculator na siya, pero ba't parang ang liit, sir? So, we can adjust the text size. So, we need to adjust the text size. We need to adjust the text size so that we can make it parang more appropriate for our, ano no? We can make it more appropriate for our application. So, let me see. So, punta tayo dito sa code. Punta tayo dito sa code, sa may XML. Pwede muna nating i-hide muna ang, ano, punta tayo dun sa text view. So, di ba, buttons ang tawag nito. Buttons ang tawag nito. So, pag pumunta tayo sa code, buttons. So, si text view, may sariling department. Parang may sariling space siya dito. Familiar to sa mga naka-experience na ng XML. Design ng para sa website nila. So, text view, pwede nating ma-manipulate yung size. So, somewhere dito, type tayo ng enter. Make sure na merong blank. So, ang ita-type natin is Android, then semicolon, colon, then text, size. Then, equals, then, yung dalawang quotation, or black quote ang tawag natin dyan. Then, let's tinker with the values. For example, let's type 34 SP. So, sakto na ba sa inyo yung size na yan? Sir, parang medyo malaki ata, sir. So, let's make it 30 SP. Ayan, di ba? So, you can manipulate the sizes of the text. Itong Android text size, para lang to sa text, ha? It's up to you how you are going to size your text. Sige daw, any questions? May questions ba dyan? I think we have ended this way too early siguro para sa inyo. So, sir, I want to change the color of my background. Ito, para experimentation purposes lang to. So, go here in the, punta tayo dito. So, it is being encompassed dito sa Android constraint layout. So, punta tayo dito sa topmost na part ng ating code. Idagdag natin Android. Then, colon, background. So, for background, pwede nating i-type mismo at then color. Ayan, may lalabas na color suggestion, di ba? So, kung gusto natin black yung background niya, then /black. So, it will change to a black background. But you also need to adjust yung color ng text natin. Baka yung text nyo di na mabasa. So, basic colors lang to. Hindi, ayan, may purple 200. Meron tayong purple 500. Meron tayong purple 700. So, we can experiment. Pwede tayong na yung color natin is hex or hexadecimal. So, yan usually yung ginagamit natin sa Photoshop, di ba? Yung hexadecimal color system. So sa mga familiar ng Photoshop, 'di ba usually ito yung mga colors na dinideal with natin. Naka-code, hexadecimal color system. So, pwede nating ilagay yan dito. Let's try here. Kung gumana ba? Oops. Teka lang. So, dito, gagawin lang natin is, tanggalin natin yung color. Let's try. Ayan. So, kung gusto natin gumamit ng hex values para sa color natin, for example, ito, pink na ito, copy natin, lagay natin dito. You can experiment on the color, ha? So, Usually, these kinds of codes will appear kung nag-open kayo ng Photoshop or Illustrator. Naka-hex yung RGB values. Ito. Ayan. You can also manipulate the color of your buttons. It's up to you. Sige daw. Any questions? I think this satisfies our parang short lang yung lesson natin today, no? Kasi nakapag-design na tayo kagad. Mabilis nating na-grow through yung lesson natin today. Okay, any questions regarding our lesson for today?
Sir, what does binding do again?
Binding allows us to position or give a relative position to our interface elements in our screen. Kasi what happens is because different phones have different screen sizes. Right? For example, there's a very small phone. There's also tablets. There's also TVs. If we do not bind the position of buttons according to their screen size, then buttons will be messed up. Buttons can be just here at the side of our screen. If the screen is too big, basically, binabind natin yung position niya para appropriate siya sa screen size, regardless of how big or how small the phone is. For example, ito, sa Pixel tayo nag-design ng nag-design ng layout. For example, ito, meron tayong sample na screen sizes eh. Go here at the top, makakapili ka kung ano yung screen size yung gagamitin. For example, ito, may tablet na Nexus 10. So, 'di ba, meron tayong appropriate na positioning ng layout natin na magdedepende kung ano yung laki or screen size ng phone. For example, for mine is an ultra long phone. It is a Huawei P30. So, kung titignan nyo sa phone ko, parang sakto lang yung size niya. So, dapat, kasi minsan kasi nagka-cut off yan pag sa luma kasi na nagka-cut off siya sa screen. Meaning, hindi siya makikita. So, ayan. So, may color na, di ba? Kasi nakaset yung color niya. So, sir, how do we put text view once again? So, dito tayo sa may palette. Click palette, then text view. Sa common, nandito rin yan, text view. Ayan. Drag lang natin. Sir, how do we drag pictures? Sa mga naggumawa nung last week na activity, siguro may experience na sila, pero you can use picture as a background. Just drag image view over here. Example, then whatever the picture that we wanted to. So, ayan, parang may Android na tayo na logo. So, ganun. Let's play it on our phone again. So, where's the phone? So, ito ang nangyayari. Kita nyo, di ba wala siyang binding? Nirun natin siya kahit nag-error siya. Tignan nyo saan yung position ng Android na logo compared sa kung ano siya sa design. Kahit anong drag mo niyan, pag hindi nakabind yung position, hindi siya mag-show up ng correct position niya. That's what happens when something is not bind. So, ibabind lang natin yung position ng Android logo. Di natin gagalawin yung position niya. So, bind natin siya sa 0. Then, bind it to the side. And dito rin. So, now, ito yung luma niya na na hindi pa siya nakabind. Now, let's rerun it with the correct bind values. So, nag-show up siya ng correctly, di ba? So, ganun yung purpose ng binding. We need to bind the position of the element so that it will not try to position itself away or somewhere weird.